Preston Ashcroft did not lower his voice. "We're not buying a company," he said, with every lawyer at the table close enough to hear. "We're buying a one-man garage from a small man with a small shop." Someone near the window laughed once, then tried to hide it in a cough. The man across from Preston did not move. Sam Prosser was 51, in a clean shirt ironed thin at the collar, with hands made for steel, not boardrooms. Down the hall, his 9-year-old daughter Nora heard the word small. She stopped counting the floor tiles. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the front counter. What Preston did not know was that the deal his family had flown in to close was already sitting in that room, in steel. A valve seat no bigger than a coffee cup, with 2 letters and 1 hand-cut line pressed into its side. And before that meeting was over, the man who called Sam Prosser small would be forced to read the name behind that mark out loud. Twice. By the end of the morning, nobody in that room would use the word small again. Sam Prosser, Rand Prosser Machine, works out on the county road. 1 shop, 3 machines, 1 maker's stamp he pressed into every finished part by hand. His wife had died 4 winters earlier, and Nora had grown up in the office chair beside the lathe, doing homework while Sam kept the machine running because stopping meant falling behind. And lately, falling behind had become a place he could name. There was a red letter folded under the sugar jar at home where Nora would not see it. Final notice across the top, back taxes, a second mortgage. A furnace that quit at 2 in the morning last February, the night Nora slept in her coat and told him she was not cold. If Sam signed the paper Ashcroft Industrial had put in front of him, all of it disappeared by sunset. The roof could be fixed. The tax letter could be paid. Nora would not spend another winter pretending she was warm. Giving in would save him. That was the trap, and he knew it. Ashcroft Industrial had won the right to bid on a marine pump contract, the kind that keeps water moving under a city. The contract depended on 1 valve seat that had to survive 10,000 pressure cycles without a leak. Their overseas line had failed. 6 seats cracked. 4 leaked before cycle 2000. 1 failed while the client's own inspector was still standing in the room. Their engineers had failed. Their money had failed. So the Ashcroft family sent Preston to buy the little shop that had not. Sam had carried 1 finished seat in his coat all morning, not because he wanted a fight, because men like Preston trusted paper until steel corrected them. Preston ran the meeting like a man who believed the room belonged to him. He slid over an offer lower than the debt it was supposed to cover. "A distressed asset with old equipment," he said, not to Sam but to the lawyers. Then he glanced toward the open door. "You have a daughter out there, Mr. Prosser. Don't make pride more expensive than it already is." Nora heard it. So did the lawyers. So did the old patriarch at the head of the table. So did the quiet woman with the laptop the auditor sent to verify the bid. Sam looked at the offer for a long moment. He saw the roof fixed. He saw the red letter burning in the sink. He saw Nora sleeping without a coat. Then he set the pen down. "Before I sell you my name," Sam said, "I'd like to know what you think you're buying." Preston smiled. "Pride is not a valuation method. Sign, Mr. Prosser. Certification is due Friday." The quiet woman with the laptop lifted her hand. "I have a question about the samples that passed," she said. Preston barely looked at her. "Our production units, standard." "They are not standard," she said. 3 units passed, only 3 in the whole program." She turned her laptop so the table could see the certificate. All 3 came back with the same mark. Sam reached into his coat and set the valve seat on the table. It made almost no sound against the wood. After all the talk and paper in the room, the thing that changed the meeting barely made a sound. The auditor leaned in and read the stamp, 2 letters, 1 hand-cut line. Then she looked up. "That is his mark," she said, "and it is on every part that passed." Preston gave a small dry laugh. A stamp does not prove who owns a process. The auditor did not blink. No, she said, the sourcing records do. She turned back to the screen. Purchase order, heat lot, courier receipt, inspection photo, all three trace back to Prosser Machine Works. Preston's thumb slid over the signature line, as if covering it could cover what everyone had seen. The lawyer stopped moving paper. The patriarch put on his glasses and looked not at Preston, but at the steel part between them. The investor's representative began to type. And the man near the window, the one who had laughed into his cough, looked down at his shoes. Nobody was looking at the offer anymore. They were all looking at the one thing all the money in that building had not been able to make. Down the hall, Nora stood a little straighter. Every passing seat in your bid was finished in his shop, the auditor said, sourced through a middleman. Nobody asked whose hands they came from. Then she ended the meeting Preston had planned. Without Mr. Prosser, you have a failing part and a Friday deadline. Preston tried once more. Anyone can polish a seal. Sam looked at the cracked sample beside his own. Then you would not be here on a Thursday, he said. Can our line copy it by Friday? The patriarch asked. Sam looked at the failed sample, then at the small part he had carried in his coat. Not by Friday, he said. Not by guessing. The steel moved under heat. Everyone treated it like it did not. Sam treated it like it did, a slower quench, a hand-lapped seal, a last pass no machine was patient enough to make. It was not a trick, Sam said. It was 11 years of being careful when careful did not pay. The patriarch took off his glasses. I came here believing we were rescuing a failing shop, he said. He looked at the offer, then at the part. I was wrong about your shop. And I was wrong about you. Preston opened his mouth. The certificate was still on the auditor's screen. The mark was enlarged now, 2 letters, 1 line. For the first time all morning, Preston had no number, no title, and no insult left to use. Sam did not smile. He did not raise his voice. He had earned 1 sharp line and spent it carefully. You did not come to a garage, he said. You came to the only door that opened. The auditor turned back to her laptop. The supplier of record has to be corrected before this can certify, she said. Then she looked at Preston. Read the name for the file, please, clearly. Preston's jaw moved once. Finally, he looked down at the report. Prosser Machine Works. The patriarch did not look away from his son. Again. Preston swallowed. Prosser Machine Works. The auditor typed it into the certification file while the table watched. Confirm the spelling. Sam looked at his name on the line where Ashcroft had wanted silence. Correct, he said. The check was still on the table. It could still fix the roof. It could still pay the red letter. It could still make Nora's winter easy. For one breath, Sam let himself want it. He wanted it so badly his hand almost reached for the pen. Then Nora appeared in the doorway. She did not say a word. She just looked at him. And Sam remembered the night she told him she was not cold. He slid the check back across the table, the same way Preston had slid it to him. I am not selling you the shop, Sam said. You need this contract, Preston said. You do not need to own me to certify a part. You need the part. He said his terms in a level voice. Prosser Machine Works would stay Prosser Machine Works. The method would stay his. Ashcroft could license it at a fair price, with his name in the specification, full credit on every report, and every certified seat finished under his stamp in his shop by his hands. Own it, Sam said, and you lose the man who makes it work. License it and we both keep what matters. Nobody laughed then. Sam Prosser picked up the small piece of steel and stood. He walked out of the buyout they had flown in to close. He did not slam the door. He did not have to. By Friday, the contract certified with his name at the top of the specification. Not shortened, not buried, not called small. The supplier line read Prosser Machine Works and the client's engineer read it aloud. Preston was in the room when it happened. This time, he corrected nothing. The red letter got paid by the man himself, from a license he had signed on his own terms. The shop kept its light on late. And Nora, who had heard a stranger call her father small, pressed the stamp into the first certified part. 2 letters and a line, by hand, exactly the way he had taught her. "Read it," Sam said. Nora looked down at the mark, then back at her father, and in a shop that was still theirs, she read their name out loud. Prosser Machine Works. So be honest. If a check could erase every debt you had by sunset, would you sell them the name they mocked or make them license it on your terms? Tell me in the comments. And if quiet people finally getting their due is your kind of story, subscribe for the next one.